Commissioner Didier, are you on the line?
Yes, sir, I am.
Thank you. Commissioner Feck, you're on the line?
Yes, good morning.
Thank you.
Morning, Commissioners. This is 9 o'clock, and we are here for our regular Tuesday morning meeting of December 15th. We have all three commissioners in their respective offices. We have Keith Johnson at the desk with the phone, and we have Amanda at the computer, and we have two of our auditors fielding any possible questions. So with that, we will call the meeting to order, and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance
Allegiance
to the flag
to the flag
of the United States
of America,
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And as you can see on the agenda, as normal, our public comment period. We have the phone number on the agenda and also on the screen on YouTube. We will just field calls as we receive them the best we can. So,
Mr. Chairman, I do have one caller on the line already.
okay, please.
Good morning, is this Colin?
It is. Good morning, Keith.
Good morning. You are on the commissioner's line and have the floor for 3 minutes. So please go ahead.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. This is Colin Hastings, Executive Director of the Pasco Chamber of Commerce, and I wanted to provide the commissioners an update on the Franklin County CARES business grant distribution that the Chamber helped the county with. First, I want to thank you for the opportunity to be given to help the county distribute these much-needed grant funds. We were tasked with distributing $400,000 by the end of November 30th, 2020. So we began in earnest the process to get everything going and started accepting online applications around 10 a.m. on November 6th. The application was simplified in an online format with fillable fields in English and in Spanish. This proved to be very successful in the sense that we had to close the application process online within 50 hours of starting it, just because requests for grants were starting to come close to $500,000. So that following weekend, the 7th and the 9th, the committee comprised of chamber staff and board members reviewed and scored the applications to determine the greatest need and eligibility. And of course, some of the applications didn't meet the criteria, were denied. After the application portal was closed, the chamber subsequently received an additional 19 applications. I guess our link was still out there in the internet space somewhere. And unfortunately, we couldn't help those companies, but we did refer them to the Regional Chamber's Rapid Response grant program that was doing the same thing. And even in the last week and a half, we've referred 5 more businesses to the Washington State Department of Commerce grant program that they have going on. So that really anecdotally shows the need that's out there. But some of the key highlights of the grant program that we have I'd like to share with the commissioners is that 6 applications were denied, but 43 grants were funded, and that represented 173 employees for those businesses. 21 of those businesses were women-owned. 39 of those 43 businesses were minority-owned. That was comprised of one business that was owned by identified companies that were 3 were of Asian descent, 1 was Black African, 1 that was Native American, and 35 that were Latino Hispanic. Of all the businesses that received funding and grant funding, approximately 3,800 days they were closed. So that's an average of 88 days of closures per applicant. Approximately $8.2 million in reduced revenue over the year comprised of all these businesses. And we were able to disperse $401,463.06. As a contractor, we felt like we had some extra cash that we could donate to the grant. Unfortunately, one of the businesses towards the end of the month couldn't come up with the required documentation to get their full $10,000 funding, so they received $1,463. But I believe that our process in such a short period of time proved to be effective, and we were quickly able to communicate to the most needed areas of distress because of this COVID-19 pandemic, and we're looking forward to any future opportunities that Franklin County may have again. And I believe that we're positioned in a good place to help the county again if something like this comes forward. So with that, thank you for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Thanks, Colin, for your participation in this project. We appreciate your help.
Thank you. Yes, it was. It was rewarding. It felt good, especially this time of year, helping those businesses that were in need, and there were some tears that were over the phone, and much happiness from a lot of the recipients. So, thank you so much.
Thanks, Colin.
Thank you.
That was the only caller I have on right now, Mr. Chairman.
All right. We'll move on to opening bids for new janitorial contract. We have two. First one being Intermountain Cleaning Service from Yakima. And the second is ABM Industry Groups, LLC from Kennewick. And I'll open them. Jennifer will look at them and get us some numbers back here as soon as she can. Should be just momentarily. So we'll go on to the vacating right away. Is Craig on that can give us an insight?
Yes. I'm here. Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. A petition for the vacation of a portion of West Grady Street was received by the Public Works Department pursuant to Chapter 12.08.020 of the Franklin County Code. Public Works has brought the petition to the board for consideration. If the board decides to consider the petition, it must signify its intent with a resolution and order the county engineer to report on the proposed vacation and render an opinion as to whether the road should be vacated and abandoned. The board is not required to consider the petition. I'll be happy to try and answer any questions that the board may have. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Beck, I've got a few questions.
Yes, please.
So, Craig, if you would, for the benefit of everybody, I've been through this before, but would you just summarize the process, just the key steps going forward if the board were to entertain evaluating this request?
Yes. If the board entertained the request, then the Public Works Office would begin a reporting process where we would solicit comments from the public utilities and any impacted landowners, and then we would take those into consideration along with looking at the plats and several other things, and to determine our opinion on the validity of the vacation.
Okay. Would that coordination include any affected cities?
Yes, we typically would talk to the city if something that looked like it would impact them.
Okay. Thank you, Craig.
Any further questions for Craig? the read ahead, the ASR was very informative. We need a motion on this or just a consensus?
I think we need a motion,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
yeah.
We just need a resolution number.
Do have a resolution. Let me see if I can come up with one. Just,
I believe the agenda shows 2020-284. If you can confirm that, I'll offer a motion.
That is correct.
okay.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, move for approval of Resolution 2020-284 as presented for the purpose of considering a petition to vacate a portion of a right-of-way as presented this morning.
I second.
Okay, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Thank you. Thank you, Craig.
Thank you.
With that, Jennifer has come back with the numbers already. So, Intermountain Cleaning Service from Yakima, bid amount is $126,902.30. It's 126,902.30. ABM Industries was the second and final from Kennewick. Their bid amount is $119,643.00. 119,643 and no cents. So Jennifer will check for validity of the bids and get back to us, I would expect next week with a contract.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
is Jennifer on the phone?
she's close.
I'd just like to say thank you, Jennifer, for beautiful decorations in the courthouse again. And I'd like to get together and make my donation to you for what you're doing, because I know it's coming out of your pocket. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Didier.
Oh my God. Oh my God. So, any other? All right, we will move on to, we're down, unless there's something on the phone, we're down to office business.
Mr. Chairman, we have two fiscal items this morning. If you're ready, I'll move forward.
Please.
First item is payroll. Move for approval of payroll as presented in the total amount of $994,054.64. 994,054.64.
Is there a second?
Mr. Chairman, last week I made my statement on this. I don't feel comfortable taking a paycheck when we have so many businesses out there that are hurting and failing as we speak. And until they're opened up and the schools are opened up, I don't feel comfortable taking salary from them that can't even earn it.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, that's not an option. What an option is you can write a check back to Franklin County. I know I did that years ago when we had, like in 09, 8 or 9 is when our employees were on furloughs. I wrote a check back to the county. So it's just not a matter of not taking one, unfortunately. So that would be up to you. Unless I'm terribly wrong.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I would point out that a second is appropriate if my fellow commissioner wishes for our employees to get paid.
Yeah.
It's not just his payroll.
Yeah. Well, not here in a second. I will. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Abstain.
Okay. All right. right, was that one and only, did I hear, Commissioner? No.
No, Mr. Chairman, we have a second item, which is a warrant. These are fund expenditures. Move for approval as presented in the total amount of $527,862.09. That is 527,862.09.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Right. All right, that brings us to consent agenda. We have,
Commissioner, I apologize for the interruption, but I do have one caller on the line, if you will.
oh, that's fine, thank you.
This Mark?
Yes, it is.
Good morning, Mark. You're on the commissioner's call, so you have the floor.
Okay. Hey, I was just calling to complain about tax dollars spent on shoulder repair. In particular, Taylor was just done yesterday or day before, and I think Dent also. But man, the crew they had doing that work, I had quite the crew out there and equipment, and to fluff up the gravel, which is really not usable for emergency roadside repair or use. The angle of it and the inconsistency of it, you can't really pull off on it anyways. And I talked to the head guy there about the the best part of that construction the year before last, I thought, was the reflective poles they put up. That made it really nice at nighttime on that twisty portion of Taylor. And then yesterday they go through with a road grader and tear them all out, and then they just lay. Now they're all laying on the ground, and hopefully somebody's going to come back and pick them all up. Otherwise, I'll have to report the county to EPA for littering. So I'm just thinking that we could use the dollars for that type of work better spent on actual roadbed repair rather than fluffing up the gravel on the side of the road. What do you think?
Forward that to Public Works and, okay, thank you, Mark.
Yeah.
Okay, I have no other callers at this time, Mr. Chairman.
No other, you say?
That's correct, no callers.
Okay. Again, that leads us to consent agenda. We have 1 through 14 this morning.
Mr. Chairman, move for approval of the consent agenda as presented with 14 items. Note that the majority of these are annual contracts or as needed contracts to meet our obligations to provide legal counsel for certain members of our public.
Is there a second?
I second. No discussion.
Thank you. With that, all in favor for consent items 1 through 14?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. That will take us down to your budget and administrative office business. Keith, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, commissioners. Before us today, before you, I should be clear, are a number of resolutions to adopt our budget for 2021. We have taken the final input that we heard at the public hearing last week, and the auditor's office has put those into the appropriate format and documentation for us to consider adopting our 2021 budget today. I should point out just a couple of highlights. We continue to recognize that there are significant economic hurdles in the county with respect to shutdowns of private businesses related to COVID. And we're fully aware of the challenges that are being placed upon the taxpayers of Franklin County. To the board's credit, last week in your discussion decided that primarily because of the economic impact on our community, that we would not adopt a tax increase for 2021. We would not take our statutorily allowed 1% increase. So the budget that we have prepared does not include that otherwise lawfully available tax increase, and recognize the importance of trying to maintain a tax level that is manageable by our taxpayers. Having said that, there are some areas of increase in the county as an employer, as a business entity, still has to pay our bills, still have to maintain equity with the marketplace for labor talent, still have to honor our labor commitments through our contractual bargaining agreements. We have been on a multi-year effort to maintain equity for our county employees, to be paid at a wage that is fair and competitive. And so we are, the first item that we would like for you to consider today is a cost of living adjustment for all of the non-bargaining employees. That will help us maintain equity between the bargaining units and the non-bargaining employees, which has been traditionally a goal of the board, is to not let one group fall behind the other. And will be consistent with the salary survey that we have done over the past, a couple of years ago, and trying to keep our talent pool where it should be to provide the services to the county. So resolution 2020-299 is a 2021 non-bargaining cost of living adjustment for those non-bargaining employees. I would like for you to maybe consider that at this point. I will just add as a final comment, in terms of changes to the budget that was presented last week, we made some minor changes as a result of the board's decision to not take the 1%. That made some changes for public works. And so the final numbers that are balanced in the budget today reflect those updates of that input that we received last week. So with that, I'll certainly try to address any questions you may have about the resolution 2020-299.
Questions, gentlemen?
So Keith, this is Commissioner Peck. These are, as the agenda says, non-bargaining cost of living adjustments. Would you speak to the premise or concept of equity among our bargaining and non-bargaining employees so that everyone has a clear picture of what the effect is, both for and against this action?
Yes, certainly. The bargaining agreements that we have with the various units that are represented in county government are subject to negotiation with those bargaining units. And there's a number of things that we negotiate with them besides just the salaries and wages. It's benefits, there's additional leave categories, there's a number of other places that we negotiate those principles or those pieces of the contract. And because they are different bargaining units and different contracts, not everyone's going to look exactly the same. But the county has stated and maintained a philosophy of trying to be equitable between bargaining units as well as between the bargaining and the non-bargaining employees, those employees that are not represented by a bargaining unit. And so we don't want salaries and benefits to get out of line for any particular group. Some issues are a little more important to one bargaining unit versus another, but in order to maintain that fairness, we try to look at all of the bargaining units and the non-bargaining employees somewhat together in making sure that our compensation package is consistent across the board and equitable to the various people impacted.
Keith, this is Commissioner Didier. Could we do this down the road after we're out of this lockdown by this governor? When we get our businesses back opened up where they can earn the money and the schools are opened back up, then can we make this move? We don't have to do this right now, correct?
Well, that's a good question, Commissioner. Legally, you can make an increase to employee wages at any time. That requires a certain protocol to follow, but it could be done. It's a little different if you were trying to reduce expenses. That would require the board to enact some kind of a reduction in force or an amendment to the budget. But it would be difficult to, in the middle of the year, reduce any particular employee's compensation. Because the nature of our bargaining units are done by negotiated contract, those have to be in place before the first of the year so that not only we can budget accordingly, but those employees that are represented can have some certainty about what their compensation will be. And if we don't do that, if we kind of leave it open-ended, we run the risk of one of the bargaining units challenging us in front of the state employment group on an unfair labor practice. And we don't want to get into that kind of a quandary with a bargaining unit. And secondly, it's something that if the county decides down the road that we see a deteriorating revenue picture from sales or property tax or some other revenue line, and the board does need to make mid-year adjustments, there's a possibility of doing that. I think there's a general philosophy amongst the history of county commissioners is that cutting salaries or reducing wage lines is a budgeting mechanism of maybe not last resort, but probably should not be the budgeting mechanism of first resort, meaning that if the board feels like the budget is too excessive, that the way to first take a look at reduction is the elimination of programs rather than trying to simply hold the line on wages and benefits. So that's a bit of a philosophical approach, but the board is free to do what it decides to do and what the majority of the board supports. So short answer to your question is we could delay this, but it's not, it creates another set of problems if you decide to delay this.
Further questions or comments? Okay. With that, I would entertain a motion for 2020-299.
Mr. Chairman, move for approval of resolution 2020-299.
Hearing no second, I will second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Against?
Hey,
So noted.
Thank you. The next item is a similar resolution. It's 2020-300, and it is a similar cost of living adjustment for certain elected officials. It would apply to the assessor, the auditor, the clerk, the coroner, and the treasurer. It does not affect the prosecuting attorney, whose salary is set by state law, and it does not affect commissioner salaries. And this resolution is more or less a balancing or again, equity concern to keep the compensation of our elected officials consistent with the parity of non-bargaining employees.
Keith, this is Commissioner Didier again.
Yes, sir.
This group is also including the administrator. You're not listed in there. Why is that?
No, my compensation is considered separately from the elected officials, and so this does not apply to me.
Okay. Their salary at this time is $94,770. The commissioner's salary is $94,681. Again, at this point in time, when the businesses can't even open up to earn the money to pay the taxes, I don't feel comfortable in raising anyone's salary, creating any new positions, or creating any more increase in fees and licensing.
Further discussions?
Keith, I don't see Sheriff Raymond on here, and I don't recall his salary being statutorily set like the prosecutor. Could you speak to that, please?
Yes, we also separated the sheriff's compensation out and put it on a schedule consistent with his own staff.
I recall that now.
Yeah.
Thank you. Keith, what would the effect of this resolution be in actual dollars? It would take the electeds from 94,770 to what?
To 95,806.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I have to say that I think it would be perhaps more than a little tone deaf for us to look at increases. I have a hard time looking at this as a parity issue with the bards and non-bards. These are executive level positions. They're driven more by market force, I think, than parity with other employees. Commissioner salaries are set and they're stagnant for 4 years. Sometimes we'll be a little ahead, sometimes we'll fall back. That's about the only thing you'd have to use for a comparator. Short of looking at salaries for comparable positions in adjoining counties, and if you were to compare us to Benton County, we'd all be under, but there's really no black and white to it. But given the relatively modest amount of the increase, I think I have to agree with Commissioner Didier here that this isn't the time for elected increases.
Okay. Hearing no motion for 2020-300, that will fail. Thank you, Keith.
Okay, thank you.
We'll move on, please.
Yes, the next item is approval of a road department tax levy for 2021. You will recall we've had extensive discussions about what's often referred to as the tax or the road shift. In this year, 2020, that road shift of taxing authority from county roads to the current expense fund was 1.7 million. We've reduced that for 2021 to be 1.2 million. We believe we had general consensus from the board, or a majority consensus from the board last week, that that would be the appropriate number to budget. So it's before you to approve this letter that goes to the county assessor authorizing the levy shift of $1.2 million for 2021.
As Keith said, it is not a resolution, it's just a letter forwarded to the assessor.
Mr. Chairman, I had a little connection glitch there. I caught most of it. You're looking for board consensus for the $1.2 million road shift letter to whom?
To the
Public
assessor.
Works Road Department.
Okay. Okay, it's a $500,000 reduction in road shift in the previous year at a time when we're not taking the tax increase. I think all of us would like to see the ability to put more money to our roads. It's a good step in the right direction. Unless somebody has a proposal for programmatic cuts, I don't see us getting closer this year, but it's a good step in the right direction, so I support.
Mr. Chairman, this is Commissioner Didier. As I drive Glade Road numerous times during the day, and as I get up above it with a larger truck, looking down on the road and the breakdown of the road, the preservation of Glade Road, Taylor Flats, is in horrible condition, and to preserve it, either we start now or we're going to pay dearly later. This road is breaking down terribly bad, and it is not long before it is going to be in shambles, and then we're going to be paying dearly. I would propose that we cut the road shift to 8.5, and then we cut the rest of it next year. We need to get back to preserving these roads, or we're going to be in dire straits.
Well, I think in that same respect that we did say last year we were going to cut this back by about a third, and we have. So it's a ongoing process. It just doesn't happen all at once. I will support this 1.2, sign the letter.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'm not hearing any proposals for where the extra 400 to 500,000 would be cut. So I still support.
I'll give you a proposal, and that is the health care benefits, and we lower that to $400 a month per person who opts out, and we use that $530,000 for the road fund.
Yeah, well, Mr. Didier, I've heard you say that before, and I think that is in my judgment, a poor approach. There are other places I think we could probably agree on some cuts. It would have been a good topic to have more discussion on earlier in the budget process, but I certainly don't agree that we should provide reduced benefits for our employees or disparate treatment for our employees. We should treat everybody equitably and the same. Excuse me. And if you need evidence of that, I would refer you to the history of the sheriff's office and what happens when we start shifting benefits and how many of our bright young patrol officers that we bring in, hire, train, and then lose them to other counties. So no support from me on that point. Mr. Chairman, I still support the proposed road shift. It's a good step in the right direction. And yes, our roads need initial support and work, but as you correctly stated, we're not going to do this all in 1 year.
I have to agree with the road conditions after serving a number of years on the County Road Administration Board. It is not just limited to Franklin County. There's every other one of the 39 counties that are in the same position as far as trying to keep road preservation together, and it all stems from from internal to our fuel taxes to our governors budget, so it's unfortunately, we're not in this alone. We do the best we can with what we got to work with, and as I said again, that we said last year we were going to address it. We have addressed it, and we'll address it further next year, or you will. So I support this 1.2.
Sounds like we have at least a majority of the board willing to support this letter, so that's probably sufficient for now.
All right, thank you.
The next item is Resolution 2020-301. It is adoption of the Franklin County 2021 miscellaneous budgets. The total amount for all of those budgets combined is $65,695,566.
Keith, this is Commissioner Didier.
Yes, sir.
Is the courthouse security under miscellaneous or is it under current expense?
It's under current expense.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we've gone over this a time or two, so with that, entertain a motion for 2020-301.
Move for approval of resolution 2020-301.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. The next item is Resolution 2020-302. It is approval of the current expense budget without the 1% substantial needs levy for 2021 in the amount of $40,830,000.
Keith, this is Commissioner Didier again.
Yes, sir.
With the transfer of security from the current security to the sheriff, what's the increase of cost to the county on that? Because I thought we'd be saving, but to my chagrin, it is an increase.
It is an increase in the short term, but the anticipation is over the long term, it would reduce our costs or our risk there. Part of the reason that we recommended funding this change, but only doing so mid-year, would give us time to study and kind of research the issue further in detail. And we are also required to negotiate the impacts of that or bargain the impacts of that change with the corrections officers bargaining unit. And we wanted time to explore that and have that discussion. This was recommended to us by the sheriff's office. We think there's some pros and cons, frankly, to it. But we want to recognize that at the end of the day, law enforcement, even here on the campus, is a responsibility of the sheriff's office, and trying to work with him to make that work for all of the agencies and departments that are behind the security fence. So we still have some homework to do on the particulars of the issue, and the budget proposal anticipates funding it through the second half of the year. So that would give us some time to, like I said, do the analysis to make sure that we're moving forward. If it is determined that that is not a cost-effective means of providing security for the campus, the board and the sheriff can work out a different arrangement. But until then, we felt like it was important to include in the consideration for the budget.
So I would have to say that this is all the more reason not to do it. First of all, we're going to be eliminating jobs in the Tri-Cities. Second of all, we're going to create more union negotiations. And right now, we're going to increase the cost. Again, I can't support anything that increase the cost of anything here at the county during this lockdown period when the taxpayers can't even work to earn the money to pay the bills.
Okay. Further comments? All right, I would entertain a motion for 2020-302, establishing our current expense budget.
Chairman, I move for approval of Resolution 2020-302. If nothing else, for further discussion, then we can vote.
Further discussion?
Keith, the discussion with the sheriff and others on courthouse security has both a fiscal component and a functional component. Can you speak to the functional side of it in terms of the type or nature and quantity of service from each of the two options?
Yeah, a little bit. I probably don't have complete answers, but I'll share with you what I know. Historically, we've had a private contractor, a security company, that staffs the security building out in front of the courthouse. The sheriff is proposing that we have corrections officers who have a law enforcement commission, meaning that they are legally available to carry firearms. The current security contractor is not an armed detail. So by using corrections officers, they would be able to have limited the law enforcement functions of being able to arrest anybody that's trying to get into the courthouse, bringing weapons or has warrants out or some other reason that rather than having the contractor call the sheriff's office when there's an issue, you would have officers immediately on hand to handle law enforcement issues. As demonstrations and protests seem to be increasing in our community, there is an increased need for security. I don't think anybody's felt threatened or endangered, but the possibility of non-trained law enforcement folks getting involved into situations that could be dangerous or not an ideal outcome, which would potentially increase the liability of the county if they were not, if those situations were not handled professionally and consistent with proper law enforcement procedures. So the sheriff has recommended that we actually have assigned corrections officers to the security shack to make sure that those situations are handled not only professionally, but consistent with law enforcement standards to make sure that we don't run the risk of increasing a liability situation for the county. That's probably the major concern there, is making sure that those folks running the security detail are employees of and report to the sheriff, that they're not employees of a private contractor outside the role of law enforcement in the county.
Okay. Just to make sure I'm remembering this clearly, the first 6 months security would be handled by?
Yeah, we would have to decide if we're going to extend a contract of a private security provider or whether the sheriff's office would take over that responsibility. Even in the first
let me rephrase it. Excuse me. The current expense budget is written and as proposed. Has the sheriff's office picking up those responsibilities in January or at the mid-year point? I thought it was mid-year point.
Mid-year point is the way that's funded.
Okay. So if we were to approve this budget, the same people providing security now would be doing so through the middle part of the year. And in the interim, we'd decide whether we want to make a change at the midpoint of the year. At that midpoint, we could opt to continue with the contract service provider. Do I have all that correct?
That is my understanding, yes.
Okay. Well, it seems to me that it maintains status quo. It maintains the jobs for those private contractors, which is an important element for me. It also gives us time to do a thorough look at it and hopefully gets us in a much healthier place with respect to COVID. So I think it's a reasonable middle ground to give us time to analyze it, not making a hasty change in January. So I can support it.
Thank you, Commissioner Peck, for that clarification. That did clear up the air a bit. I would like to ask Keith, how long has this security provider been here with the courthouse? How many years have they been providing this security?
I believe we changed security providers within the last couple of years, but I'd have to research that. I don't know if the sheriff's on the line could respond to that, but my recollection was that we had a different contractor a couple of years ago. And like I said, I don't want to state that unequivocally because I'm
Okay.
operating from
My second question is, have we ever had a problem?
Very seldom have we had a significant problem. There was one instance in the past year that the sheriff personally got involved in as he was coming to a commissioner's meeting. That's really about the only recent issue. The fact that we have so much of the courthouse shut down for COVID reasons right now has largely reduced the public coming into the building. We're not doing jury trials, and so it's a far fewer number of people coming through the security shack at this juncture, but we expect that once the COVID restrictions are lifted, that, and especially as we return to jury trials, that our numbers will increase exponentially of people coming through the security shack.
Okay.
Keith, this is Sean Sant. I just wanted to add to Commissioner Didier's question. We have had requests over the past year as well as previous years where we've had issues in the courtroom where we've required assistance from the sheriff's office, and that was one concern of having the ability of the sheriff's office available to respond. We've had an individual that fled the courtroom and was apprehended by sheriff staff that were leaving the sheriff's office. So obviously that does address some of the concerns that we have seen personally and observed over the past few years at the courthouse itself. And of course that will increase the need once we do resume trials. We have approximately 450 pending trials where usually we are just under 300. So we have a significant amount of cases that are going to resume at some point. The court's current suspension of trials expires January 11th, so it will be determined at that point in time what direction the court takes on whether jury trials resume at that time or there's going to be an additional continuance. So I just wanted to add that we have had situations where the sheriff's office has been requested and required to get involved with issues that we have had involving individuals attending court. Thank you.
Sean, on that, are you saying that the security is then responsible for taking the prisoners to court, or is the sheriff's office responsible for that?
No, the sheriff's office would be responsible because typically the one case in particular that I am thinking of, the individual fled after being ordered by the court to remain in the courtroom. And so at that point, that was a criminal flight or an escape, and that would require the sheriff's office or a law enforcement officer intervention. So at that point, in that particular case, the sheriff's office was involved in the eventual arrest and detention of that individual.
Okay, well, seeing that we've got 6 more months to figure this out, I'm good with this resolution.
And that might be something to reach out to the sheriff's office for clarification, because if they have a provision for termination of their contract, if that notification has gone out, that might create an issue where we might have an immediate need where somebody is going to have to take over. I don't know the particulars. I wasn't requested to review the particulars on the expiration, but if that notice has been given and that company decides, rather than to continue on some kind of month-to-month basis, if they decide, hey, we've had to make financial decisions and take a contract elsewhere, that might create a void. So there is going to be a budget gap that would either go to the private security firm that manages it now, or that funds will be available for covering the sheriff's office to transition an eventual takeover. I know hiring additional sheriff correction deputies doesn't come overnight. It's going to take a while. And so I would, if I could just throw it out there, I would encourage the board to coordinate that effort with the sheriff's office, because that does take time. There's a need to have those individuals that are hired to attend the academy, and the coordination of academies during COVID is somewhat problematic. So I would just throw it out there that it does require a little bit more planning than simply waiting to address it 6 months. It's probably going to take at least that time to get the bodies in place. So I would just suggest coordination with the sheriff to make sure that we're all on the same timeline.
That been addressed, Keith? Are you aware? Or?
Yeah, I think so. Well, I've had some conversations with the sheriff, but they've just been conversations at this point. We have not finalized any plans. There was a notice that was sent to the current contractor. Their contract was set to expire on December 31st. The county sent them the required notice that we did not anticipate continuing their service after the first of the year. So we'll have to go back and revisit with them to see if they're willing to continue, or if the sheriff's office has the resources. Either way, we will make sure that the security is provided within the constraints of the budget.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Well, it seems now we are even more confused on this. We may be out of security. This does not seem like it's well thought out and planned. We should have kept renewed the security for 6 months. If we haven't done that, we've left ourselves open here.
Steve, are you still on the line?
My understanding, Mr. Chairman, was that that contract is to be extended for 6 months so that we were covered while we researched this. So I would agree with Commissioner Didier. That's a question we need to sort out here.
I don't know where I remember seeing it, but I thought that our contractor would work month to month while this is being sorted out. But maybe that's just wishful thinking.
You can see the dilemma we could be in if they packed up and left and there's nobody for security.
The sheriff has assured me that's not going to happen. That I know at least whether it's the existing company or a different security company or corrections officers, that we will be able to staff the security detail until we get final board approval on the path forward.
Further questions?
I don't know how we can have a budget that's in order when we've left this open. How we can vote on this figure if we know it's going to be a moving target now.
So, Mr. Chairman, I would observe that most of the numbers in a budget are moving targets. They're projections and estimates, and we do a pretty good job of coming pretty close. This one is more of a moving target than most. I just want to be sure that we're clear that funds to cover the operation of security are in this current expense budget for the 2021 calendar year. The question is not whether or not funds have been loaded in the budget, but whether or not we go with a private contractor versus sheriff's office.
If I may, Commissioner, I think you've explained that very well, that the budget is a mechanism to provide the resources to the department for the services that they're expected to provide. There is money in this budget for the sheriff to hire additional corrections officers to staff the security detail starting on July 1st. But there's also the money in the budget to retain a contractor for the first 6 months. It does not, the budget does not specify who provides those services, whether it's a private contractor or the sheriff's office directly. That is the decision that still has to be made. But the funds are in the budget to provide that option, that if it's the current contractor that gets extended through June or some period thereof, or the sheriff's office itself that uses existing personnel and overtime, then the budget allows those resources to be available. So we're kind of talking a little bit about form over function, but the budget is anticipating that we will have a security detail in place on January 1st, that there will be no lapse in providing that service, but the funding for the additional costs related to the possibility of our corrections officers to handle that function does not take effect until June 30th or July 1st.
Okay, is there any further discussion? Either way, it's covered, so.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. I think you have one.
I do have one more administrative resolution to consider. The day before Thanksgiving, I believe it was the 25th of November, we allowed department heads and elected officials to release staff a couple of hours early so that they could be home with their families for the holiday. And it's a gesture of goodwill that we have done in the past on different occasions, typically Christmas and Thanksgiving, the holiday weekends. And when we did this, the county auditor has objected and thinking that the commissioner, the chairman, did not have complete authority to authorize this. As I said, we've done this in the past on other occasions. It's never been a problem to my knowledge. And so before you this morning is a resolution based on the recommendation of the prosecuting attorney's office that to make sure that it's clean and authorized, that the board ratify the decision of the chairman of the board to allow employees to use administrative leave if they left early on that particular day. I think it probably points to a policy question of what scope of authority the board wants to grant to the chairman, or whether it's a good idea or good policy to encourage people to go home early and be with their families. But in light of the COVID restrictions that have been placed on our employees and the special circumstances that we've had ongoing most of the year, we think that there's a legitimate public purpose in caring for our employees and extending that to them. But we also recognize it needs to be done within the scope of permissible authority. So I'm just asking for your approval of this resolution that will ratify the chairman's decision and make sure that we don't have any other further questions about the legitimacy of the action.
Discussion?
This is Jeff Burkhardt.
Yes.
Hi, Jeff Burkhardt, Director of Audit Services. Thank you for bringing this in front of the board. The only reason that there was a question on this was that the auditor's office did not see that where it was in the chairman's authority to do this. So thank you for rectifying this.
Just one point of clarification. We did not see where this has been done in prior occasions, and that really led to the question. We did do some research in our office, and at least from the administrative leave standpoint, the only time we've seen it done is for inclement weather, which the chairman does have the authority to release employees and close the courthouse, and then also due to the COVID-related issues. So to Keith's point, thank you for highlighting that if there's additional authority to grant in these situations, it would help clarify for us so that we don't slow down any processes. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Discussion,
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Yes, Commissioner Peck. I think it's clear that, however well intended, no single commissioner has really any authority to take an action unless that action is, there is existing authority for it in statute or policy. So I agree that a policy is appropriate, just like we have one for inclement weather, as Jeff has pointed out. Second point I'd make is sometimes the cure can be more costly than the ailment, and by that I mean we've got a well-intended action to give people some time to be with their family, and there's a couple of ways we could correct that. One would be to try and undo it somehow, which would be very costly in a number of ways. And that's what I mean when I say we don't want the cure to be more costly than the ailment. So I think it's appropriate to ratify the action with the understanding and stipulation that we'll develop a policy that speaks to this and lays out what the authority of the board or the chair will be in the future, so that we don't find ourselves in this predicament. But I think at this point the appropriate thing is to go ahead and ratify it and get a policy in place so we don't repeat.
I'd have to agree, Chairman. This is a great gesture, but we do got to remember this is taxpayers' money again, and with that significance put on it that it is taxpayers' money, it's hard to justify that one person can give it away. But the thing I have a hard problem with is that they were let loose early to be home with their families, and at this point in time on Thanksgiving, we weren't supposed to gather under the proclamation of the governor. So I can see that it was used in an emergency situation, because right now we are still in an emergency situation. So I think this does need to be clarified down the road so we don't make this problem again. Thank you.
Now, thank you for the support. And with that, we do have a resolution 2020 I'm sorry?
Yeah. Move for approval of resolution 2020-303 as presented regarding special admin leave at Thanksgiving.
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's all I have, I believe, for this morning, and I don't have any callers on the phone.
All right. With that, is there anything else for the good of the board today?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to take a moment and acknowledge that the budget process, has, like many things, been likened to the process for making sausage. I'm not sure that that's fair to the sausage making industry, because I think the budget process might be uglier still. But I just want to thank the staff in the auditor's office and the staff in the commissioner's office, and of course anyone else who had a direct hand in it. But those are the two offices that really, I think, carry the majority of the weight in sorting this out. It is not a simple process, and I can tell you I've not been here as long as Commissioner Cook, but I've been here long enough to tell you that things were quite smooth this year by comparison, and just thanks to all who had a hand in it.
Yeah, I can totally agree with that, Commissioner Peck, as far as the the system, the process being so much smoother than what was when I first got here. So, when I first got here, there was, full days, 5 days of and Tom remembers those days going through every line item. So, I know that the three of you that I see on the screen here have done an awful lot of work for getting this to fruition today. So thank you. Anything else?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to just say one thing here, that there was a meeting of 6 elected officials, over 10 locally, these were state elected officials, 10 locally elected officials, and over 50 businesses last Friday. Plus there was another one on Sunday that I did not attend. But these businesses are not asking us to open up the county. They're asking us to give support to them for their opening up on their own recognizance. And therefore, I ask that we make a motion that we support any business that wants to step out, open their business on their own, but that we will be there to back them up if they were challenged on their opening.
I don't know, but I think we've tried that and it didn't work. So,
Mr. Chairman, I don't see a lawful way to do what Commissioner Didier is asking, but I would like to hear from our legal counsel. As much as anybody, I want to support our businesses, but I don't see a legal path to do so. So, Mr. Sant or Ms. Johnson, if you're on the phone and you see a legal way for us to take that liability on the county, please share it.
This is Sean. I think if I heard Commissioner Didier's request correctly, is basically to give support to the business. Now, that could be interpreted in many ways. I think some of the support that this board has shown for businesses has been the collective presentation and gathering and partnering with various individuals and other elected officials and presentation to the governor, as well as many others at the state level. The video that was put together to show the hardships that businesses are going through and requesting that the governor hear those hardships and recognize that there's alternative paths available out there. So I guess it really depends in the form of what is being requested as support. I think everybody that I have heard on the commission supports the idea that we want to support businesses. We want to try to get the federal aid that was coming in through the CARES Act, getting that to the sources of those that were most harmed with the closures, and hopefully getting a pathway forward to be able to open up. The concern, I guess, that comes with advocating if something is going to be interpreted as the county backing and supporting an individual business's individual choice to open up, whether or not that's a lawful opening consistent with the current regulations and proclamations issued by the governor, that would potentially open up the county for liability if it's the county suggesting that it's now a lawful path to do so. I know this county has been very consistent that they've never taken a position of closure. The county governing body, the Board of Commissioners, has always supported the idea that businesses need to remain open to be able to support our local economy as well as the economy as a statewide presence. So there's a different mechanism, I guess, of showing support for the businesses, working with them to try to get the governor's office to hear those pleas for the ability to allow other businesses to open. Most of the businesses that are here locally, both in town, outside of town, are allowed to be open, but of course under restrictions. And I think the reality is that most businesses, whether they're open or not, they are facing a hardship. They're not able to have the same level of business revenue that they had prior to COVID. And I think that's the real issue. So trying to get the governor's office and others to try to hear those cries and pleas, I think that's an effective method that's lawfully consistent with the ability of the county to show the support. if the county were to adopt some other approach that would suggest that they do not have to adhere to the governor's proclamation or abide by health, the health department has always had authority for businesses that serve food, for instance. They could come in. We used to see those inspections regularly reported in the local papers, of which businesses, restaurants would fail or have so many failures for failing to abide by certain things. That's they got their license either from the state or the city. Most of those businesses have to conform with those requirements that are from the issuing agency. Franklin County has control over any licensing that the county is responsible for, but if the state has granted a business their license to formulate or incorporate, whether it be an LLC, sole proprietorship, or other foundation, it is the state that has the control and regulation over that business licensure, and therefore the state could enforce, contrary to anything our board wanted to do. The state would be the one that would be able to come in, levy fines, and it would be concerning if the Board of Commissioners would take a position suggesting that we would support financially or otherwise in any effort to go contrary to that, but certainly working to assist them, assist the businesses consistent with the law, trying to lobby our legislative members locally to get their laws changed so that maybe the governor doesn't have the authority beyond 30 days on some of the requirements. But remember, Section 1H of the proclamation, which is the authority that our legislators had previously granted as recent as last year when this authority was amended. It was the legislature that granted the governor that authority to do that. So I have heard from several legislators that they want to address that issue. They want to address it this session, and that would make sense in an appropriate way that the county governing board can address that practice or authority of the governor by lobbying our local elected officials at the state legislature to move that to be changed or addressed so that it does put a limit on the extent that the governor would have authority. But as it is right now, that is the law. It was the law that was passed by the legislature. It was almost a unanimous vote by both our state Senate and state House. There were some good reasons that I have heard for the rationale behind making that modification. But in fact, it was modified as recent as July of 2019, where they reinforced the governor having that authority to do that. So hopefully discussions can continue and support can continue going to the state legislators to make sure that they are well aware that this is an ongoing concern for any business in the state, in our community. They need to have the flexibility to be open and operate, because I think what has been pointed out, if our businesses are not earning a revenue, that's a loss of revenue to the county and other government services that are needed. So anyway, I just wanted to clarify that. I think there's plenty of opportunities for giving support to those businesses, but I just want the board to be aware, urge caution in that support. If it's support by lobbying a change in the current law, that's a great opportunity to do so, but I would caution any action that would suggest anything contrary to following the state law. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Anything further this morning? Once more, anything further? Any calls, Keith?
No, sir.
All right, with that, we are adjourned. Thank you.